right? If it doesn't prevent contraction and transmission, then why is it their business? Is that to save you from serious harms of COVID? Because the data on that is clear too. You're in an excellent position to fend off COVID if you're young and healthy, and these shots are not a contributor to that protection. So where do they get off telling you to take these things? It's not logically coherent in any regard.
Well, I'll tell you what they do, Brett. They just assert that it's for readiness, unilaterally. They don't provide any data, hey, this is for readiness. And one of the main reasons that I'm wanting to speak out and discuss this issue is, I think of the Milgram experiment, and I think about the few people that didn't keep increasing the shocks. And who were some of those people? They were people that were electrical engineers that were familiar with what that entailed and what was safe and what it means. And I'm an expert in readiness. You can say that there's people that maybe know a little bit more than me, but by any account, I am an expert in holistic health and fitness. There are not very many division holistic health and fitness officers. It's a new program. I've been in the military for 12 years, and I've seen it from the line, being an infantryman, and the medical side. I know what readiness is. I know what makes it up, what it's constituted of. And I will tell you that this mandate has been a disaster for readiness. That's my opinion. And a lot of the people that are saying, hey, you know what, it's for readiness, they're commanders that don't have any medical experience. They don't have any scientific experience. I'm a clinician scientist, and I had excellent training. And, from my perspective, using, the kind of reasoning that you outlined, you Bayesian inference, right? You understand biology, so you don't just look at a randomized controlled trial and say, oh yeah, this is how it is. Like you think of the prior probability of how likely it is that a novel, injection based on a novel platform for a novel virus, for a retrovirus that mutates rapidly, for a type of virus, a coronavirus that has never been successfully vaccinated against before. And you go, I think regardless of what this randomized controlled trial says, I'm going to want to see probably more than one RCT. I'm going to want to see some more data. And in terms of readiness, there's a lot of stuff that you can't measure, this spiritual piece. And I'm telling you, off the backs of coming out of Afghanistan for 2 decades, people that have sacrificed untold hours, years of their lives, lost friends and loved ones. And to turn around and go into this where people are, forced to wear masks, even though they believe in their hearts that they don't have an effect, forced to take vaccines that they don't believe have an effect, that takes a toll on readiness. And that spiritual toll is being discounted as if it's not worth anything. And it's definitely a part of the picture. And I know that your position, and I agree with your position, that on the physical side for young and healthy population, that it's also not great. But even without acknowledging that and going into that, which is there's still some controversy there, I just want that spiritual piece to be discussed and to be recognized as a part of the crisis that we're dealing with. And you see it reflected in recruiting and retention numbers. And everybody's kind of throwing up their hands and going, oh, wow, I don't know why this is going on. And, I'll tell you, this is a hypothesis. This is my hypothesis, this is what's going on. It's a spiritual crisis, and people don't know what their purpose is when they're wearing uniform. They don't know why they're here. They don't know why they need to work hard on their fitness, to work out, eat right, get their sleep. Why would you have the motivation to do all those things if you're just kind of mailing it in until you get to retirement, or just trying to survive until you finish up your first enlistment?
Well, we could unpack that for a full podcast easily. I think part of the problem, I find no question that the demoralization of the force amounts to a spiritual crisis for sure, and that will have impacts on readiness that are going to be hard to measure, right? What role does it play in recruitment and retention? That's you could study it, but it's not going to be obvious. You're not going to know why people don't show up at your recruiting office, but it's certainly going to play a role. But at the very least, we can say that for anyone to look you in the eye and tell you that these mandates are there for the purpose of readiness, it's like somebody lighting a house on fire, and you say, "Why are you doing that?" And they say, "I'm remodeling," right? It doesn't make any sense. You've got mandates that are forcing them to discharge highly trained people, pilots, right? Pilots in who we've invested millions of dollars. You're going to compromise the cardiac health of people who are flying around jets worth many millions of dollars. Those pilots' ability to endure stress in actual battle is dependent on their heart health, and the safety of the nation may be dependent on their ability to do that job. All of these things impact readiness in a disastrous way. So the idea that this is about readiness just couldn't possibly be more ironic. This is making us much less ready. And, I said in the first episode with military folks that I try to tread very carefully around issues of conspiracy. I don't believe in advancing conspiracy theories. I believe in talking about hypotheses. That's what I do as a scientist. But the problem is that the absurdity of claims around readiness, when you are claiming to make the force more ready as you are very directly making it less ready, that sounds worse than incompetent. That does not sound like an error. That sounds like something that our enemies might want us to do, right? It's far better, rather than face our military on the battlefield, to get us to hobble it, right? That sounds like enemy action. And I'm completely open to hear, and I will be in some ways relieved to discover that this isn't somehow our enemies causing us to destroy the force that protects us, but it is at least a hypothesis that belongs on the table, right? These are very unreasonable things that a country that wished to last, another couple hundred years would not mess with our readiness in this way. And I guess I'm hoping that somebody will hear me say that, and they'll say, Bret, as bad as this is, here's an explanation that establishes this is not our enemies. This is something gone wrong internal to our system. But I ain't heard it yet.
I'll advance a more charitable hypothesis, and it's just that there's a scientific technocratic elite that really believes that this stuff works. They think that you can, they really believe it. They really believe, hey, if we have centralized control, we have the experts that are the best educated. They come from Ivy League schools. We get them into the positions where they can make the decisions. And, everybody else is too stupid to make decisions for themselves. And so we need that power and authority in order to do that, to make the world a better place. And maybe they recognize at this point that they were wrong with this particular issue, but that concept needs to be defended. That regardless of, the risk-benefit analysis for young, healthy service members for this particular injection, down the road, the scientific technocratic elite are going to come up with the next great thing, and they need people to comply, because otherwise, we'll never make it as a species.
Well, I have to say, I don't believe that hypothesis is likely. I will say the beauty of speaking in terms of hypotheses is it tells us exactly what the rules of engagement are. That hypothesis makes predictions, and unfortunately, they're not easy ones for us to test. But I would say if these people really believe this garbage, then they're first in line for these shots. And I would bet strongly in the other direction. I think they are mandating things for other people, and they have all kinds of explanations for why they themselves are doing something else. Now, I know that publicly they will represent themselves as accepting the treatments, but hopefully someday we'll know.
Yeah, I think it's even more than what Grant was saying, because it's not, the destruction really of the military didn't start with these vaccine mandates. I mean, it started with critical race theory. It started with demoralizing the force and making us lose sight of our military identity and focus on things that make us different individually. And I think the most disheartening, one of the most disheartening aspects of what I've witnessed in the military is that I've believed, that the military is a force for good. And I think most everyone does. And I still believe that. But when we witnessed this coercion, this abuse, these unlawful orders, and we voiced our concerns up the chain of command, nobody listened to us, or very few people listened to us. And we had to go outside of our own chain of command. And the only reason why over 100,000 military members are still, fighting and have their job today is not because the chain of command realized what they did was wrong. It's because of the court systems. It's because the court systems put injunctions in place. And I hope that people understand, the severity of that, the fact that military members had to go outside of the military system and find attorneys to represent us. And usually what happens is, there's the UCMJ, there's the court systems within the military. There are remedies in place within our chain of command, and we could not get anybody to listen to us. So that is a very significant fact that I think people need to understand, is that there are people fighting within the military against our own chain of command because we believe so strongly in our oath of office, in our oath to the Constitution, and in protecting constitutional rights for all Americans.
Yeah, I think this is a crucial point, that you have a higher obligation. The chain of command is a mechanism. But your obligation is to something higher. In the case of military officers, it is to the Constitution, and therefore to the nation and its well-being. And to the extent that the chain of command is saying utterly absurd and dangerous things, you're obligated to fight it, as difficult as that is.